The film begins with 4 American friends, Paul, Greg, Ruthie, and Fiona, trekking through the fog-shrouded mountains of Bhutan, the air crisp and thin, each step crunching against loose gravel and icy patches. Their breaths form brief clouds, vanishing quickly into the cold. They're deep into their journey, backpacks heavy with gear, spirits high despite the exhaustion, laughing over shared stories and inside jokes that echo through the towering peaks. As they traverse a narrow, rocky path winding along a steep mountainside, Paul lags behind, his face drawn and pale. He slows to a stop, turning his head slightly as if catching the faintest whisper in the wind. The others, several feet ahead, don't notice at first. Paul's eyes dart from shadow to shadow, his brow furrowing as a distant, low-pitched whistle pierces the mountain air. It's an unnatural sound, out of place amidst the sharp, clean tones of the wind sweeping through the valley. Greg, realizing Paul is no longer beside him, pauses and calls out. His voice bounces off the rock faces, swallowed by the wilderness. Greg goes after him and steps into the hidden cave underground. Shortly enough, Greg finds Paul, sitting on a jagged outcrop of stone. His eyes are wide, unblinking, his lips moving in a silent whisper. But it's what looms in front of him that causes Greg's blood to run cold, a towering, grotesque skeleton embedded in the rock, its elongated limbs twisted in an agonizing pose, its massive, skull-like head stretching upward as if caught in a silent scream. He reaches for Paul's shoulder, but the moment his hand hovers inches from his friend's jacket, Paul's eyes snap, his voice dry and cracked, his eyes filled with a primal, otherworldly fear, as he mutters, "If you touch me, you'll die." Unfortunately, Greg doesn't take the warning seriously and drags him out. They find refuge in an abandoned, crumbling house further down the trail, its roof sagging under the weight of decades of snow. They huddle together, building a small fire as the storm rages outside, the wind battering the thin walls, making the ancient wood groan and shudder. That night, as the candles crackles and shadows dance along the walls, Ruthie wakes with a start. She hears the same eerie whistle Paul had heard on the trail, cutting through the howling wind. She rises slowly, her breath visible in the icy air, her heart hammering in her chest. She peers through the rooms but sees nothing strange. The next day, Ruthie sees a figure in the snow and assumes it's someone who can help. She gets out the house and pleads with the individual to come in and help Paul. But she senses something off about him and rushes back to the house. Greg and Fiona rush in behind her but have no idea of what Ruthie saw. The following morning, Ruthie wakes up and calls out for Paul, but the only response is from Greg and Fiona, who are also confused and shivering in the morning chill. They see the tracks as well and quickly follow them, winding through the snow and up towards the jagged mountain ridges. After trudging through the snow for several minutes, they find Paul sitting by an old wooden bridge, his back to them, staring into the dense fog that blankets the valley below. Fiona, catching her breath, steps forward and calls his name, but Paul doesn't respond. She reaches out, but before her fingers can touch him, Ruthie's expression changes, her eyes darkening. She suddenly stabs Greg from behind and throws him off the cliff. She kills and throws Fiona off the cliff too. As the last echoes of violence fade into the mountains, Ruthie stands, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps, her face splattered with blood. She turns towards the steep cliff edge, her eyes wide and unblinking, and without a word, hurls herself off the rocky precipice, her body vanishing into the fog below. The scene shifts to a quiet, suburban street, where James jogs through his neighborhood. Later, he rings up a customer, exchanging brief, polite conversation, his mind clearly elsewhere. After work, he heads home, pulling into his driveway just as the sun dips below the horizon. As he gets out of his car, he notices Amanda, his young neighbor, sitting outside. James approaches, asking if she's okay. She talks about the emptiness she feels after losing her father, her words tinged with grief and frustration. Before the conversation can go deeper, Amanda's mother calls for her from inside, and the girl quickly stands, giving James a fleeting, haunted look before disappearing into her house. The next morning, James receives a call from Amanda's mother, Nora, her voice tight with worry. Amanda is missing. James knocks on her door, where Nora's eyes are swollen and red, fear etched into every line of her face. The police arrive shortly after, asking questions, taking down details, and combing through Amanda's room for any signs of where she might have gone. Nora, desperate and overwhelmed, turns to James, reminding him of his past as a detective, pleading for his help. Though hesitant, James agrees, a sense of duty and concern for the girl pushing him back into the role he had left behind. That afternoon, James waits outside Amanda's high school as students pour out of the main entrance. He spots Devara, Amanda's closest friend, and calls her over. She looks up, startled at first, but then seems to relax when she recognizes him. James asks if she has any idea where Amanda might be, explaining that her mother is worried sick. She tells him that a few nights ago, she, Amanda, and some other friends went to a nearby bridge as part of a dare. They had heard about an urban legend, something called the Empty Man, and decided to test it for fun. The ritual was simple: find an empty bottle, blow into it, and whisper the name of the empty man. She explains that after they did this, they heard something moving in the darkness beyond the bridge, like the crunch of snow underfoot, but no one was there. They panicked and ran, convinced they had somehow summoned something. As Devara recounts the story, her eyes widen, and she suddenly tenses, looking over her shoulders as if she hears something. She starts to panic, shoving a crumpled piece of paper into his hand, quickly muttering that it's the address of one of their friends who was also there that night, then hurries away. He drives to the address Devara gave him, and Brandon's father answers the door, telling James that his son is also missing. James checks the other friends' addresses that Devara mentioned, but every parent tells him the same thing, that the friends just vanished overnight. As the sun almost sets, James goes to the bridge Devara mentioned. The structure creaks as the wind whistles through its rusted beams, and the water below flows in a slow current. He then finds an empty bottle and picks it up, then puts it to his lips and blows, the hollow sound echoing into the emptiness of the bridge. At first, nothing happens, but then the wind dies down, and an unnatural stillness settles over the area. James turns in a slow circle, scanning the shadows for any movement, and that's when he hears it, a faint, hollow whistle coming from beneath the bridge. His pulse quickens as he kneels and finds a ladder leading under the bridge. He lowers himself down, his boots hitting the muddy ground beneath the bridge. He shines his flashlight around and freezes. Hanging from the rusted beams above are the lifeless bodies of Amanda's friends, their faces pale, eyes wide open. His breath catches in his throat as he steps back, the beam of his flashlight catching a message scrawled in dark, dripping letters across the concrete wall: "The empty man made me do it." Minutes later, the area is swarmed by police cars and ambulances, the flashing lights reflecting off the icy river below. Meanwhile, elsewhere in town, Devara sits alone in a steam room, the thick mist swirling around her. She leans back, trying to calm her racing heart, the steam making it hard to see more than a few feet in front of her. But then, a shadowy figure steps into the room, and attacks her, stabbing her with a knife, but in reality, she's the one stabbing herself to death, blood splattering against the white tiles as her screams echo off the steaming walls. Later that night, James returns to his house, his mind racing. He spreads the evidence he's collected across the table, the address from Devara, and the chilling message he found under the bridge. He types Pontifex Institute into his laptop, the name he found scribbled on one of Amanda's notebooks, and quickly finds a website that looks like a mixture of self-help and cult rhetoric. The address on the screen matches one of the papers he found in Amanda's room. Suddenly, his phone rings. It's Nora, her voice shaking as she tells him she's outside his house. He opens the door to find her on the porch, tears streaking her face. She clings to him, sobbing into his shoulder, whispering that she's losing hope, that her daughter might be dead like the others. James, feeling the weight of her grief, calms her down, and promises he'll find Amanda no matter what it takes. In the middle of the night, James is startled awake by a sudden creak from the hallway. He reaches for the baseball bat he keeps by his bed and steps cautiously into the darkened hall. His front door is slightly ajar, the frigid night air slipping through the crack. He quickly checks the rooms but finds no one. The next morning, James drives to the address he found for the Pontifex Institute. Inside, the receptionist hands him a clipboard with a form asking for personal details, but James ignores it, his eyes drifting to a nearby hallway where a group of people are listening to a man speaking about enlightenment. James listens as the man talks about shedding one's identity and becoming part of a greater consciousness, claiming that the empty man watches over them, guiding them to their true purpose. James approaches the speaker afterward, asking about Amanda, but the man only smiles, telling him that the empty man is neither man nor spirit, but something far more ancient and powerful. Feeling he's hit a dead end, James wanders deeper into the building, finding a basement filled with empty bunk beds. In a nearby room, he sees a small group huddled together, blowing into empty bottles, their eyes closed as if in prayer. Suddenly, James is found and led out of the room. While out, a young man from earlier whispers that Amanda is downstate and that if James really wants to find her, he needs to follow the map to a remote location in the national park. Later, James drives for hours, the trees around him growing denser, the roads narrower and less maintained. Eventually, the road turns to gravel, then dirt, before opening up into a small clearing surrounded by towering pines. He parks the car, and pushes open the creaking door of the first cabin. Inside, he finds a small, makeshift office. He shuffles through the stacks, his pulse quickening as he finds folders labeled with familiar names: Amanda, Devara, Brandon, and the other missing teens. As if someone had been tracking their every move for months. Pushing open a rusty filing cabinet, James pulls out a stack of VHS tapes. He slots one into the dusty TV, the screen crackling to life with a low hum. The grainy footage shows a small group of young people huddled around. Suddenly, one of the teens in the video stands up, his eyes rolling back as he clutches his stomach. The camera shakes as the others back away, their frightened whispers escalating into panicked screams. The young man reaches into his own abdomen, blood pouring from his hands as he pulls out his intestines, using them to smear strange symbols on the cabin wall behind him. The tape abruptly cuts off, leaving only static. James stumbles back and exits the cabin. To his shock, the sun has set, and darkness now blankets the forest. He makes his way back toward his car, but as he navigates through the trees, he hears the distant crackling of a fire. Crouching in tall grass, he spots a group of figures gathered around a large bonfire in a nearby clearing. James carefully steps closer, but his boot snaps a dry branch underfoot, the sound echoing through the silent woods. The group freezes, their heads turning in unison toward his hiding spot. James turns and bolts, branches whipping at his face as he barrels through the underbrush. He reaches his car, yanks open the door, and throws it into reverse, the wheels spinning in the mud, and gets away. The next day, James drives back to the Pontifex Institute, parking across the street as he watches 3 young followers pile into a car. He trails them through the winding city streets until they pull up to a large, private hospital. James slips in behind them, ducking into a side hallway as they head toward a patient's room. He follows them and peers through the window as they kneel before a comatose patient, their whispers echoing softly in the sterile air. Realizing he needs answers, James confronts one of the young followers as he goes home, dragging the man into his car and demanding an explanation. The terrified young man mutters that the patient is a kind of antenna, a physical conduit for the empty man's consciousness. James, losing his grip on reality, presses his gun to the man's head, demanding something that makes sense. But before he can pull the trigger, the young man begins to laugh, his eyes glistening with manic energy. He tells James that the empty man has chosen him as its new vessel, that the whispers he's been hearing are just the beginning. James, panicking, leaves the man behind and drives back to the hospital, desperate for answers. He pushes through the front doors, retracing his steps to the patient's room, only to find Amanda in the room with the comatose man. James pulls out his phone, his hand trembling as he dials Nora's number. The line crackles before she picks up, her voice sounding distant and strained. He quickly tells her that he's found Amanda, her tone sharp with confusion as she asks who Amanda is. James's grip on the phone slackens, his mind racing as he struggles to understand what's happening. Suddenly, a sharp pain slices through his temples, forcing him to sit on a chair. His vision blurs, the edges of the room warping as if the walls themselves are closing in. Amanda tells him that the patient's time is coming to an end, that the empty man needs a new host, and he has been chosen. Amanda's voice echoes in his mind, urging him to surrender, to stop resisting the inevitable connection. But James refuses to give in. His survival instincts kick in, and kills the patient. James staggers back, his chest heaving as he walks out the room, his head throbbing with the aftershock of the psychic connection he just severed. But as he catches his breath, he notices something strange. The hospital staff are falling onto their knees and worshiping him. The realization hits him like a freight train: in killing the patient, he hasn't severed the connection. He's completed it. He is now the vessel. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.